Hey everybody, this is Donald, and what I'd like to do today is I'm going to preach a message here in a minute on the power and the peace of grace. And I want you to think about this. You know, America, we're really going through some stuff here lately. This virus has got us all on a lockdown. We're just facing horrible stuff and a lot of fear. A lot of people are frantic about um, what's taking place in our country. But here's something that God showed me. I've been studying, and Wednesday night I preached on being carriers of how we get people to Jesus Christ, and we do everything that we can to get people to the Lord. And then as I restudied that later this week, the deal is we just got to get. Hey, Brother Mike, I appreciate seeing all of y'all joining, and I'm going to do my best today to give you something that's going to help you out. Mike's one of my friends down in. He's a preacher friend down in Alabama, and I preached a revival for him at his church down in Mississippi. So I'm glad to see you on with us, Brother Mike. And but as I got to thinking about that man that they dropped down the roof to get him to Jesus Christ, it was never about could Jesus heal that man. It was about could they get him to Jesus Christ. That's the deal. It's not about what God can, it's what we will do. Will we get them? And then I got thinking about this. I want y'all to listen to me. Out of 2 Kings chapter 4, let me just read it to you out of verse 8. Y'all hang in there with me. No sound? Can y'all hear me? Can everybody hear me? I know Barbara said she don't have no sound, so it's cutting out on me. Hang on, Brother Mike. Is that better, folks? Uh, all right, thanks, Teresa. But let me read you. I cut it up a little bit. Maybe that'll help. Uh, Let me read you this out of 2 Kings chapter 8. And it fell on the day when Elisha passed Shunammite, where was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. And it was so that as oft as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread. And she said unto her husband, Behold, now now I perceive that this is a holy man and God which passes by us. Let us make a little chamber. So they made this guy a little chamber. It says, I pray thee on the wall, let us set for him there a bed, a table, and a stool, and a candlestick. And it shall be when he cometh to us that he shall turn in hither. Now here's what I want you to think about. Here this woman was. She was a lady that just wanted to help the man of God out. So she's at her home, and as the prophet of God would come through Elisha, she said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do something good for him. So as he would pass by all the time on his wanderings around as a prophet, she said, we're going to do something good. So they built him a little chamber, and we hear of that today. It's called a prophet's chamber. A lot of churches will add a little room on their place for missionaries, for revival preachers, and just for various uses to put people up that they can spend a night or a week at the church as they're doing God's work. And we call it a prophet's chamber. Well, this lady built this prophet's chamber for Elisha. So then, as Elisha's coming through back and forth, he asked his servant, he said, what can we do for this woman? So they brought her in and they asked her, they said, ma'am, the prophet of God wants to bless you. What can we do? And here's what she said. She said, I live among my people. I'm a free lady. They ain't really nothing I need. So Elisha looked at his servant and said, what can we do? He said, well, she don't have no children. So the prophet of God called this lady, and who was an aged lady, a little bit up there, and he told her, he said, you're going to have a son. God's blessing you with child. So we don't just see her goodness, but we see her gift. God, this prophet of God, for no reason other than just wanting to be gracious to this lady, gave her a gift. Isn't that how God does us? Every now and then God will just bless us unexpectedly. Every now and then God will just open up heaven and he'll just bless us. So they gave this lady a gift. And this child, within the year, at that same date, the woman had a child. And can you imagine a couple that weren't able to have children? And then God blessed them. And I want y'all to think about something with me. Every time in the Word of God, when God blessed a barren woman, he gave them a male child. He done it with Abraham. He done it with he done it with Isaac. He done it with Jacob and Rachel. All through the Word of God. Whenever Samson's parents, John the Baptist's parents, every time a couple couldn't have a child in the Old Testament, God blessed them with a male child. And I don't know about y'all, but there's times in my life when I'm just living my life, I'm trying to do right by God, I'm trying to live my life right, just out of nowhere God blesses me. I mean, out of nowhere, God just pours out his gift upon me. Isn't that amazing? How that as we just live our life, we try to do right, we try to do good, we go to church, we give our tithes, we witness to people, or we serve at the church, and we try to do an honest day's work, and then we think, man, sometimes life gets tough, and then all of a sudden God just blesses us. God will just pour out a blessing on us. One of my friends said the other day that he preached on that we need to be good to people and we need to do good things for other people. And he said on there, he said, hey, somebody brought me a lunch. His wife had just recently died. And he said, somebody just brought me a lunch today. I got home after church and preaching on Facebook Live. He said, there's somebody come and they gave me a lunch. He said, and then somebody called and said, hey, preacher, don't get nothing for supper. I'm going to bring you supper. Ain't it amazing how God just blesses us with the little things of life? Here this lady and husband, they had done thought they wasn't going to have a child, and God just blessed them and gave them a child. So we see her goodness. We see the gift. But then I want you to think about this. We see her grief. That little baby, that boy grew up. It said that child, and when the child was grown, it fell a day that when he went out to his father, to the reapers, he said unto his father, my head, and he said to a lad, carry him to his mother. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon, and then he died. This little gift that God had gave this husband and wife. He had grew up big enough to go out into the fields with his father. He was small enough that the mama could still hold him in his lap. So this boy was probably between the ages of 5 to 8 or 9 years old. And God had blessed them. And as they're out in the field, apparently this boy had a heat stroke. Something happened. His head started hurting him real bad. He had probably overheated and he had got hot. And the old boy's, he's about to fall out, and the dad gets somebody to take him to the mama. And the mama holds that boy and rocks that boy all the way till noontime that day. And then he died. Folks, I want y'all to think about something. Our life's just not about good things. Our life's not just about all being up on the mountain all the time. Sadly, there's times in our life when we're going to experience grief. I was thinking about just last Sunday night. Me and my family was in a closet right here to my right. We got in the closet at about 9:30 last Sunday night. Worried about the big storm that was passing over us. Our phone just kept going off. Emergency, emergency, warning, warning, warning. And that tornado went over our house. It crossed a little bit, about a little over half a mile from my house, went over Highway 52, over to the 4-lane on Highway 76. And that thing dropped down right in front of Brass Lantern. And it started winding its path for miles through Murray County. In about an 8 to 10 minute span, 7 people died. Homes were destroyed. Life's not always about good stuff. Sometimes life is about grief. I wish that everything was always good. I wish we could live our life and everything be good and life be a bed of roses. But you never know when grief's going to hit. You never know when trouble is going to come your way. You never know when you go to bed one night and wake up the next morning how your life's going to be turned upside down. You never know with answering one ring of the phone how your life's going to be turned upside down. We got a family in our church right now. One of our former deacons at our church is over here at a kind of like a rest home. And his family can't even get in to see him. Had a lady in our church whose father died yesterday because he was in a place and one of the workers had this COVID-19 and he caught it. And he died. And more than likely, they're not even going to be able to have a service. They're going to have to go to the graveyard and have a little service there and bury her father. Life's about grief. It's not always about good things. It's not always about getting gifts. Sometimes we face grief. But thank God that story don't end there. Listen to what the lady said. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God and shut the door upon him and went out. And she called unto her husband and said, Send me, I pray thee, one of the young men and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of God and come unto him. You know what? We don't just see where this lady done good. We don't just see where this lady got a gift. We don't just see where this lady experienced grief, but we see where this lady had a little bit of guidance. She thought, man alive, there's something within her heart. There's something within her spirit. There's something within her soul. Said, take that baby and take him to the prophet's chamber. And lay that little boy up there where the man of God comes and he sleeps and he eats and he studies when he's with us. And there's something within her prompted her to take that little boy and place him upon the man of God's bed. Folks, you listen to me. There's something within every one of us that's ever been saved that when grief comes, when trouble comes, when sorrow comes, that thing will guide us and push us toward God and prod us toward God. If when grief comes your way and you don't turn to God, I would check up and see if I've got the real deal. Whenever trouble comes my way, when heartaches come my way, when difficulty comes my way, when tragedy comes my way, it don't push me away from God, it pushes me to God. That don't mean God's going to answer my prayers immediately. That don't mean God's going to take my prayers away, problems away, but it pushes me to God. Why? When your grief and your tragedy and your problems push you to God, guide you to God, there's something takes place. Listen to the next verse here. She's going to the man of God. And he said, "Whether wilt thou go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath." And she saith, "It shall be well." They knew when the prophet of God come, that there were certain days that he would come to their house. This lady had experienced grief. This lady had something that guided her and pushed her to take that little boy and put him up on the bed of the prophet. And then all of a sudden, folks, as she done that, her husband said, "Where in the world you going to go? You don't know where the prophet of God is." And she said, "It is well." Folks, let me tell you, when trouble comes, turn to God. When you turn to God, you're going to get peace. Folks, let me tell you, that don't mean life's going to be a bed of roses. But I found this out. If in the midst of our trouble, in the midst of our grief, in the midst of our pain, if we'll turn it over to God and lay it down and give it to God, God will give us peace. Here, this lady, her son was laying on that bed dead. Her son was there. I mean, I can see the sorrow. I can see the tears. But here she laid that thing down. You know what God tells us over in the New Testament? Casting all your cares upon him, for he cares for you. This lady took her son and she gave him to God. She laid him up on the prophet's bed. Now, she don't know the outcome. She don't know what's getting ready to take place. But the Spirit of God within her prompted her to take that baby and lay it up on the prophet's bed. What do you do when trouble comes your way? What do you do when heartache comes your way? What do you do when tragedy comes your way? Lay it down at God's feet. What can you do? Will worry make your problems get any better? Will staying up all night fix your tomorrow's problems? If you failed way back yonder and you messed up way back there behind you, is your worry going to fix that? You know what you can do, my friend? Give it to God. Take it and lay it at the feet of God. I love this story. This woman, God had blessed her with a child. She got to see that little boy grow up. I can see the joy of that family. I can see that family as they so celebrate that little boy. Then he gets up there about the age of 5 to 8, something like that. The little boy died. And she took that little boy and laid him on the prophet's bed. The husband said, "What in the world are you going to do?" She said, "It is well." Then I want y'all to listen to this. Then she saddled an ass and said to her servant, "Drive and go forward, slack not thy riding for me, except I bid thee." She said, "Get on this donkey and I want you to start riding and don't you stop." So she went and came unto the man of God to Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of God saw her far off, that he said to his servant, "Behold, yonder is that Shunammite woman. Run now, I pray thee, to meet her, and say unto her, Is it well?" Listen to this, folks. Boy, I love this. Say to her, "Is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with thy child?" So the old prophet of God, he takes out, or the servant of the prophet of God, he's heading out. He saw her coming, he lit out, and he goes and meets her. He said, "Hey, Elisha wants to know, is it well with thee? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with your child?" Now, folks, I want y'all to get this right here. I want you to understand what this woman, the peace that she had in her heart. Her son's laying back there dead on her bed. The prophet of God sees her. He loved her. He cared for her family. He said, go find out if it's well. Is it well with her? Is it well with the boy? Is it well with her husband? And you know what she said? It is well. You know where that comes from? It comes from peace. It is well with my soul. Peace like a river. Folks, I want you to think about that. It is well. As Christians, when grief comes, when trouble comes, when heartache comes, we are the only people in the world that can go to the graveyard and say it's well. We're the only people in the world that when cancer comes our way, we can say it is well. We're the only people in the world when problems overwhelm us, we can say it is well. I want you to look at this woman's grace. Look what happened here. So they go to tell the prophet of God. And this woman, she's just torn up. She asked that prophet of God, said, why? Me and my husband, life was good. We was taking care of you. Every time you come by, we took care of you. And then for whatever reason, you gave us a child. You asked God to give us a child. Now we got a child. And now that boy's dead. Why'd you bring this up on us? Did you just deceive us and want to break our hearts? And old prophet of God, he goes. And he told his old servant, he said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to head toward that woman's house, and I want you to take my rod. And I want you to take my rod, and I want you to lay it up on that boy. And lay that rod up on his face. And it says this, and he laid the staff upon the face of the child, but there was neither voice nor hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet the man of God and told him. And when Elisha was come into the house, behold, the child was dead and laid up on his bed. And he went in therefore and shut the door upon the two and prayed unto the Lord. And he went up and lay upon the child. And he laid on him eye to eye, hand to hand. And listen to this. All of a sudden it said, and the child sneezed 7